If you're a Matrix fan, strap yourself in because we're about to get really deep into the story. Welcome to Jam Punch, my name is George, thank you for watching so far. This video might be the most detailed Matrix storyline recap on YouTube. This one video will combine all 3 Matrix movies, the Enter the Matrix video game, all 9 AniMatrix films, all 29 Matrix comics, including the unreleased ones, and the Matrix Online video game, and attempt to put them all into one timeline before or after the other, depending on where they go in the story. That's 43 separate Matrix stories that I'm now going to try to fit into one comprehensive timeline. First, a warning, there is so much that we don't know about the Matrix story, so no matter how many theories we say, there are so many things that need to be assumed when talking about the Matrix backstory. For example, like the architect tells us that Neo is the 6th one. That's 500 years worth and 5 separate Matrixes worth of people and storylines that we just had known nothing about. Okay, so other than that, you'll see that I've done my best to pose a kind of good reason for every Matrix storyline being in the one place that I've put it. But at the end of the day, the Matrix is meant to be about interpretation, and that's the whole point. No one knows what happened in the Matrix storyline other than the Wachowskis, and who knows what glorious chaos is going underneath Lana's beautiful haircut. Okay, starting from the start, we've got normal humanity. That's the turn of the 20th century, we're just inventing AI. The Second Renaissance is a 2-part short film that basically explains how the Matrix was built in the first place by the machines, and why the machines were invented, why there was a war between machines and humans, etc. So it's all set way before the first Matrix film. In the mid-21st century, humanity falls victim to its vanity and corruption. They develop artificial intelligence and soon build an entire race of sentient AI robots to serve them. Many of the robots are domestic servants meant to interact with humans, so they are built in man's own image. With increasing numbers of people released from all labour, much of the human population has become slothful, conceited and corrupt. Despite this, the machines were content with serving humanity. The relationship between humans and machines changes in the year 2090, when a domestic android is threatened by its owner. The android, named B166ER, kills the owner, his pets, and a mechanic instructed to deactivate the robot, the first ever incident of an artificially intelligent machine killing a human. B166ER is arrested and put on trial, but justifies the crime as self-defense, stating that it simply did not want to die. The prosecution argues that machines are not entitled to the same rights as human beings, and that human beings have a right to destroy their property, while the defense urges the listener not to repeat history and to judge B166ER as a human and not a machine. Next, we see more details of this trial in Bits of Pieces of Information. That's one of the Matrix comics.
It opens with a Zion Archives account of a trial happening between a lawyer named Clarence Drummond speaking to the court and speaking to a robot called B166ER. The year displayed shows that this is taking place in 2090 to 2139, so at some point within that time frame. The account says, a B1 series domestic droid appears to have malfunctioned and killed 2 men, Jared E. Krause and Martin Kreutz. Drummond says, can you tell us in your own words what happened that afternoon? What's happening here is this flashback, B166ER basically being downtrodden and insulted by his employer. Martin saying, oh yeah, we'll take the robot home down to the scrapyard or something like that. We then hear from the courtroom. Drummond says, can you tell us what you were thinking at that moment? I was aware of a surge in my memory drive as I recalled my entire performance record. I was unable to duplicate Mr. Krause's conclusion. B166ER defends himself by refusing to be sent to the scrap heap, which he does by killing Martin Kreutz. Gerard's then begging B166ER to be spared. Big metally robot fingers on Gerard's face, crushing Gerard's head. The closing statement from Clarence Drummond. He's saying that the robot is not technically a citizen according to United States law, but then he's saying maybe they should. Maybe they should have the same rights. This robot was just trying to defend themselves. B166ER loses the court case and is destroyed. Then we see a couple more headlines. USA Today, droid faces termination. We see another headline, the Million Machine March. Androids and liberal sympathizers flooded the streets of the nation's capital today in protest of the sentence handed down by the New York State Appellate Court. And as we see in the Second Renaissance, this is what kicks-start the entire human versus machine war. Across the industrialized world, mass civil disturbances erupt when robots, along with their human supporters and sympathizers, rise in protest. Rioting and protests such as the Million Machine March unfold across the United States, and the authorities use deadly force against the machines and their human supporters. Fearing a robot rebellion as well as a schism with humanity, governments across the world destroy all the robots and purge their human supporters. However, some robots escape destruction because humans still want or need them.
The surviving robots leave in a mass exodus and build their own new nation in the cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia. They name their new nation 01, a reference to 01, the numbers used in binary notation. 01 prospers, and the machines begin to produce efficient, highly advanced artificial intelligence that finds itself in all facets of global consumer products, which further bolsters the fledgling nation's economy while the human nation's economy suffers severely. The United Nations Security Council calls an emergency meeting at the UN headquarters in New York City to discuss an embargo and military blockade of 01. 01 sends 2 ambassadors to the UN to request the admission of their state to the United Nations to peacefully solve the crisis, but their application is rejected and the world's nation agree to start the blockade of 01. The United Nations dispatch their aircraft to unleash a massive nuclear bombardment on 01, devastating the nations but failing to wipe out the robotic race as the machines, unlike their former masters, were much less harmed by the radiation and heat. Shortly after, 01 retaliates by declaring war on the rest of the world. One by one, mankind surrenders each of its territories. As the machines advance into Eastern Europe, the desperate human leaders seek a solution, codenamed Operation Darkstorm, which covers the sky in a shroud of nanites, blocking out the sun to deprive the machines of solar energy, their primary energy source. Inevitably, it also initiates a worldwide famine and total collapse of the biosphere. Operation Darkstorm commences as hoverpad-powered planes scorch the skies all across the world, while united armies of humankind launch a massive ground offensive against the machines. Using shock and awe tactics, humanity initially has the upper hand because the first waves of attacking machines have become obsolete and outclassed. Soon, legions of new models of machines that appear more like the Sentinels of the films swiftly overrun the human armies. In the final years of the war, the machine armies continue to destroy human defences and conquer the remaining continents. Many humans are forced to relocate underground into the massive waste systems of human megacities to avoid the lethal pathogens the machines unleashed into the air, which possibly leads to the foundation of the first subterranean city of Zion. As the machines have already wiped out most of the human armies above ground through sheer numerical superiority and biological warfare, UN leaders finally surrender. At the United Nations headquarters, the representative of 01 signs the terms of surrender and states, "Your flesh is a relic, a mere vessel. Hand over your flesh and the new world awaits you. We demand it." Then, the 01 representative detonates a hidden thermonuclear bomb within itself and destroys the headquarters, New York City, and the last of humanity's leadership. The machines, having won a Pyrrhic victory, turn to the defeated humans and begin repurposing their bioelectric, thermal, and kinetic energy, essentially turning them into batteries and making them an endless energy source for machine society alongside nuclear fusion. With the humans as their new energy source, the collective sedation of humankind is employed to keep the humans down without outright destroying them. The machines then create the Architect Program. The Architect Program creates the Paradise Matrix. He creates the Merovingian Program as the operating system and gives him some agents. These agents are meant to keep humans in their place within the Paradise world. These agents also take the form of angels so that they match the Paradise theme. One of these agents is Seraph. Unfortunately for the machines, the Paradise Matrix completely fails because the human brain just cannot accept that there is no choice. They can't accept happiness being forced upon them. So many people die. Some programs become exiled like Seraph. Next, the machines try something new, the Nightmare Matrix. The Merovingian recruits new programs, for example vampires and werewolves and Persephone. People die again because the Nightmare Matrix has the same failure. Humans just can't accept that there is no choice. This is when the Merovingian becomes an exile right here, after the Nightmare Matrix fails, because the machines say to themselves, okay, we need someone new, someone to conquer this human choice mentality thing. So they get rid of the Merovingian and they invent the Oracle program. The machines create Matrix version 1. The Matrix version 1 looked just like the human kind of form, the human life around the turn of the 21st century. This is what the architect tells us. But not perfectly, as the agents at this point looked a little weird, as you're about to see. The Oracle joins this Matrix program as the operating system, and she's there to analyze every human emotion and thought at all times. This is where the Animatrix story world record takes place. It's happening here because when you look at the agents, you see they don't look like the suited and booted normal agents. This is agent version 1, basically, that the machines are kind of trialing. This story is about Dan Davis, a track athlete who is competing in the 100 metres in the Summer Olympic Games. He has set a world record time of 8.99 seconds, but his subsequent gold medal was revoked due to drug use. He decides to compete again and break his own record to prove them wrong. Despite support from his father and a young reporter, Dan's trainer tells him that he is physically unfit to race and that pushing himself too hard will cause a career-ending injury. Dan is adamant on racing anyway. On the day of the race, he is monitored by 4 agents in the stadium. The race begins and Dan starts off strong. However, the muscles in his leg violently rupture, putting him at a setback and scaring many of the people in the stands. Through strong willpower, Dan ignores the injury and runs much faster than he did before, easily passing the other athletes. Before he can cross the finish line, the agents detect that his signal is getting unstable in the Matrix due to his massive burst of energy. 3 of the agents possess the 3 closest runners and try to stop him, but are unable to catch him. The burst of energy causes Dan to be unplugged from the Matrix and wake up in his power station pod, where he sees the real world through his pod. A sentinel employs electrical restraints to secure him back in his pod. Dan's mind is thrown back into the Matrix, where his body is instantly exhausted from the race and Dan tumbles to the ground at high speed. Despite this, he easily wins the race and breaks his original time of 8.99 seconds with a time of 8.72 seconds. The next scene shows Dan in a wheelchair being wheeled through a hospital. A nearby agent calls his other agents to tell them that they have erased Dan's memory of the race and that he will never walk again, nor be an issue for them. However, Dan whispers the word free, angering the agent. Dan then stands, breaking the metal screws that bind his restraints to his wheelchair, and takes a few steps before falling down and being helped by a nurse. Then the first ever 1 appears, they visit the architect and choose to enslave humanity. Now the machines make Matrix version 2. This time the agents look a little more normal, a little more kind of inconspicuous, so they blend in with the crowd. However, this is the second version of the Matrix, which means that it's still flawed. It's not perfect, as we're about to see. For these early Matrixes, the machines are still using real-world locations. In the Neo Matrix version 6, the one that's in the films, everything takes place in Mega City. That's it. That's a fake place. There is no actual real-world locations in the films. Deja vu takes place here because this character can effectively predict the future, just like the Oracle can. So therefore the implication is that the Oracle's power is somehow being mismanaged and is therefore kind of like leaking into the human subconscious somehow and leaking into this main character. Therefore it's before the machines perfected her role. There are still some bugs in the Oracle's code that they need to patch out.
A stockbroker was married to a woman whose mind was unusually sensitive. Extraordinarily, her sensitive mind was also able to receive premonitions of what was to come, or, in actuality, perceive the déjà vus permeating the Matrix. She was also able to self-substantiate during her sleep, witnessing her body being paralysed in a pod surrounded by the machines, and mistaking it for a nightmare. During one such attempt to lighten the situation, the husband chose to talk about his work, and about how his colleague Butterfield had heard rumours of a new wonder drug by the pharmaceutical company Pfizer. Upon hearing this, the wife immediately confirmed the rumours of the pill's upcoming release, and further confirmed how sensational the new drug, Amortin, was going to be. The stockbroker, in a risky move, decided to invest every dollar they could afford into Pfizer stocks, nervously watching the market for the next 2 weeks. His wife's intuition proved to be keen, however, and the investment immediately paid off. Not long after, while the couple were out shopping, the stockbroker's wife suddenly perceived that a vehicle was bound to crash into the store they were currently in. Acting quickly, she prevented the accident from claiming many lives. This deed, however, did not go unnoticed by the media, and the woman soon appeared on a TV interview. Then, revealing why she even agreed to the interview in the first place, she warned San Francisco of an upcoming earthquake. With her advice, she was able to prevent the devastation that the natural disaster would have caused. But this disclosure of her abilities had marked the beginning of the couple's troubles. Following a déjà vu which the couple had both experienced, and believing they were beginning to detect and uncover some underlying structure to the world, the couple were suddenly pitted against an ever-growing list of problems. And as if being forced from directing their focus towards the truth, they were instead stalled into place by her pregnancy, then by a barrage of lawsuits and investigations, and even by the infestation of pests in their home. Mysteriously, the déjà vus also suddenly stopped. As such, through time, the couple were eventually completely sidetracked back into normal cycles within the Matrix, and were confined into the insurmountable struggles they had both been forced to ceaselessly cope with.
Next, we've got the comic Let It All Fall Down. The ending here of the EPOS being sent to every journalist is so disastrous for the machines that it must be this imperfect version of the Matrix. It must be version 2.
Peter is a programmer who is working on a project called EPOS, which are AI programs that improve their code to become more efficient. He learns that his colleague, Hardin, has secretly started using his EPOS in Hardin's surveillance work, which Peter knows is very dangerous. He tries to stop Hardin but fails, so he hires a hacker named Rain to scare Hardin into stopping. Rain finds something scary in Hardin's EPOS surveillance project, a live video feed of the red pods in the real world, in which Peter can see his own real-world body in a pod. Agents appear outside as they escape. They try to go to Peter's office, but it has all been replaced by a mall. They retreat to Peter's secret house in the forest where Rain finds even more strange videos, this time of a doc bot in the real world. Rain suggests contacting her hacker ex-boyfriend to help, but when they arrive at a petrol station, agents appear and shoot Rain. Peter runs out, but the entire death area has been wiped away, with Rain nowhere to be seen. Peter decides to finish what he started by going to an internet cafe and uploading one of Hardin's surveillance EPOS onto the internet, sending it to journalists all over the world. Once finished, he tries to leave through a door, but it's locked, then throwing a chair into the window simply makes it bounce like taffy. Agents arrive and shoot Peter, but he manages to send the EPOS across the internet. In his last moments, he sees the green matrix code and Rain's real-world pod, reading that it's now vacant.
Next we have the comic Morning Sickness. See, the leading lady here, she was able to find her child in the fetus fields, implying that it was during a period before the machines had high security, with all their sentinels and thousands and millions of machines patrolling the surface. This one person was able to find a baby pod and steal it.
A woman wakes on the surface and hears her operator greet her through the headset. She tells him she's awake and, when he urges her to get moving to the fetus fields, crushes one of the small spider-like maintenance machines crawling over her which had just bitten her neck. Sitting up, she reminds herself that she needs to remember why she's doing this. Not for Zion or their scientists, but for the children. At this point we see her walking along the fetus fields, reaching one of these specific pods. She reaches up to a pod and grabs the child, the baby inside it, pulling it free. She also states that she's doing this for herself. When she cracks the fetus pod free and puts it in her bag, she hugs it, saying, "He's perfect." Suddenly she looks around to see the searchlight of a harvester blazing down on her and screams, "Oh god, no!" desperately running away between the rows of fetus pods and demanding a way out of there immediately. The operator lets her know that they are tracking her and tells her to go to the waste funnel, saying they will meet her at the bottom. The woman leaps into a giant funnel with the harvester close behind her, and, as she slides down with the harvester's tentacles following her, she catches onto some tubes and almost loses the pod she is carrying, just grabbing it by the carrying bag's handle. Quickly the tentacles are almost on her and she slips, the pod falling away and the tentacles finally closing in and impaling her with their claws. She then wakes up in the chair in the real world, revealing that it was all a training sim, and she returns to consciousness in the real world. The operator calms her while he unstraps her from the chair, saying that she's okay and out of the simulation now. He remarks that he's not surprised it failed, saying that they obviously need a male to secure the infant, but is cut short by the woman grabbing him by the throat, shouting at him and insisting that she is not giving up. A child cries out, "Mama!" and again less worriedly as the woman approaches the doorway the child is standing in. She asks if it was a bad dream and picks him up, telling him that she's fine as she hugs him, and as she reassures him saying, "I've got you now," we see the child's head jack, an indication that she has now successfully completed the real mission.
Next we have the AniMatrix film Matriculated. I believe this takes place in this very, very early version of the Matrix, because the humans successfully managed to reprogram a machine to be more empathetic. Now this is the last thing the machines want. The machines need there to be a very clear definition between human and machine. That's how the war happens. Remember, the machines want there to be a war, because it increases their control over the human race. Matriculated is about a group of above-ground human rebels who lure hostile machines to their laboratory in order to capture them and insert them into a matrix of their own design. Within this matrix, the humans attempt to teach the captured machines some of the positive traits of humanity, primarily compassion and empathy. The ultimate goal of this project is to help the intelligent machines develop free will in order to overcome their original search and destroy programming, rather than reprogramming it by force. The rebels' hope is that, once converted of its own volition, which is a key point discussed in the films, an enlightened machine will assist Zion in its struggle against the machine-controlled totalitarianism which currently dominates Earth. The film starts with a human woman, Alexa, looking out over the sea, watching for incoming machines where she sees two runners, one of the most intelligent robots, approaching. She leads them into the laboratory, where one runner gets killed by a reprogrammed robot, but the second runner kills the robot before Alexa electrocutes it. The rebels insert the runner into their matrix. The robot experiences moments of mystery, horror, wonder and excitement, leading it to believe it may have an emotional bond with Alexa. However, the laboratory is attacked by Sentinel reinforcements. The rebels unplug themselves to defend their headquarters, along with the help of other captured machines, indicated by the machine's mechanical eyes changing from red to green. Alexa unplugs the runner that now has turned good, where it saves her from a machine. The rebels and the attacking machines are all killed or destroyed, except for the runner. the robot plugs the dying Alexa into the rebels' matrix. When Alexa realizes she is trapped inside their matrix with the runner, she is horrified and her avatar screams and dissolves as the runner exits from the rebels' matrix to see a dead Alexa in front of him in the real world. The film ends with the converted runner standing outside, looking out over the sea, the same shot as the intro with Alexa, as the robot pulled her from consciousness into his hardware. Next, the comic Day In, Day Out. See, here the agents want to get into Zion. Agent Smith was the only agent in version 6 who wanted to get into Zion. The implication here is that the machines tried inputting a directive to get into Zion into the agent's software for this story, but they patched it out during a reset. Smith needed to be the only agent who wanted to get into Zion for the Oracle's plan to work.
Taking place in the Matrix, the scene opens on a busy street. Focused on an unnamed woman, she remarks on the monotony of everyday life. She steps into the street and the truck almost hits her. At that last moment, Agent White possesses her body and leaps out of the way. An explosion erupts from the side of a nearby building, with members of the Resistance pouring out of the smoke. Agent Bird and Agent Ash join him by taking possession of 2 blue pills. They call in a tank and a helicopter. A rocket comes out of nowhere and takes down the helicopter. Several red pills, including Tosk, are on the ground moving towards an exit. The agents follow them by rapidly overriding nearby blue pills. To buy themselves time, the red pills then shoot into the crowd, killing numerous blue pills. Agents fire back, killing all red pills. The agents acknowledge that they killed the red pills and soon they will be in Zion. The agents leave and the blue pills who were possessed are alive, hurt and confused. The woman stands there with half her arm missing.
Next is the comic System Freeze. Now the agents wanted to make this leading character continue their AI program, implying that the machines had an imperfect AI system themselves. Why would they ask a human, a petty little human, to continue working on AI if they already had everything sorted? So therefore, I believe System Freeze takes place in this version 2 of the Matrix. Also, they mention Mount Everest, it's set up Mount Everest, and again, there are no real-world locations in the Neo Matrix.
While climbing Mount Everest, Freya Canning discovers the withered corpse of a fellow climber, a Japanese man whose body she believes has remained uncovered since at least the previous season. Freya, acknowledging the difficulty of retrieving the dead bodies of any climber at her current altitude, offers the man a quick prayer before leaving it to continue with her own ascent. A short 15 minutes later, Freya herself faces possible death after falling 100 feet down into a cavern. Her body broken, Freya starts entertaining her own death in the mountain and recalls hearing how other climbers, after dying in similar crevices, had their bodies eventually chewed up by the ice and later churned out somewhere in the mountain. She recalls how she started writing an artificial intelligence program called Self, and then realises how she quite likes the idea of the mountain churning her up. While visualising her own death, Freya then spots a man in a black suit and dark glasses walking through the ice and approaching her. The man introduces himself to be Agent John Fine, and helps Freya to stand up on her own. The seemingly recovered Freya is apparently admired by Agent Fine and his colleagues because of her AI work. Agent Fine then offers to get Freya out of the crevasse. A doubtful Freya initially declines this offer, which made Agent Fine take a step away from Freya, causing Freya to immediately fall back down to the ground and suffer pain. Agent Fine explains that he only wanted Freya to complete the AI program, something she would have done in case she lived anyway, and even offered to pay Freya handsomely for the program. Freya then accepts. Upon acceptance of the deal, Freya is instantly transported back to the surface of the mountain with her body intact. Dismissing the whole experience as a product of hypoxia, Freya continues on and eventually reaches the summit the next day. Back home in New York, Freya is in front of her computer screen, no longer able to continue the work on the new AI program, due to what Freya suspects is an association between the program and the upsetting memories of Mount Everest. Still believing the entire experience to be hypoxia, Freya decides to set the completion of the program aside. Agent Fine knocks on Freya's door 2 days later, asking about the AI program. Freya, at first unable to recognize the man, suddenly remembers the entire experience at Mount Everest, after Agent Fine introduces himself as the man in the mountain. He reminds her of the deal. Freya admits to Agent Fine that she can no longer complete the program due to the program's strong associations which Freya avoided talking about. Agent Fine, asking if Freya was referring to the ice, suddenly starts to crystallize and speedily generates so much ice from his body that the ice quickly proceeds to envelop and tighten around Freya until it kills her. In a morgue, the coroner and his assistant discover that Freya suffered broken bones which were consistent with a fall, but were puzzled because of the lack of anywhere she could have fallen from. The coroner also concludes, after looking out the window and pausing to see the sun and the sky in a perfect July day, that Freya died of hypothermia.
Next, the King of Never Return comic. See, there are suited agents in this. The key here is that I believe Phoebe, the main character, is the one of this cycle. The reason I think this is because she's narrating the whole thing in the past tense, and at the end, her final line is that they died. And she can't be aware that she's dead if she's not the one. Neo was able to be aware that he's dead because he was the one. So therefore the implication is that Phoebe is the one of this cycle. A narrator describes how Zion and other Red Pills are part of the rebellion against the machines, and expresses how they're only doing this out of boredom, but we don't know what this is. We see a bank in Mexico and a prominent Red Pill woman carrying a gun. She steals some money and describes how she's done this many times before. Then agents in an attack helicopter find her and go after her. Acknowledging how her plan is reckless, she's adamant that this simulation is better than her boring real life in Zion. She calls her operator for an exit and leaves the simulation. We learn that she is called Phoebe. Her crewmates are surprised at how close this occasion was, citing how other simulations weren't as dangerous. Even so, they load up a new simulation entitled Spaghetti Western and send themselves into it. Phoebe feels the new information about people, emotions, places and skills wash through her brain. Her narration continues to express how much she hates the real world, naming the Oracle's brainwashing, and how much she resents waiting for the One to appear. She also explains how she and her crew stole this ship. In this simulation, she shoots an agent. In real life, her ship is attacked. It's revealed that it was a different Zion ship that attacked them. The story ends with Phoebe claiming that she's dead. So then Phoebe awakens as the One, she visits the architect in his room, and again, she chooses to enslave humanity. Zion gets destroyed, and again, the cycle continues. So this is a bit more blurry now, but Matrix version 3 and version 4, here we can't tell which is which. We honestly can't. At least I can't. One of the first to take place is broadcast depth. The reason that I think this is because there's a quotation mark around the word potentials from the leading character's dialogue, and that implies that the term potential is a brand new term for these red pills. Resistance operative Maggie is sent to the Digi-Caribbean by the Oracle with the crew of the Callipyge to scout for potentials. Maggie's twin daughters, Lisa and Ashley, stayed in the real world on board a different ship to take part in some training. However, they planned to visit their mother in the Matrix as a surprise for her birthday. The twins are able to do this by closely examining an operator over many occasions and learning which buttons they press on the big Matrix control computer. Lisa manages to jack into the Matrix to meet Maggie. However, unknown to the twins, the trace also gave away the location of Maggie's hovercraft to some nearby sentinels. The Callipyge is attacked, killing Maggie's crewmates, leaving Maggie all alone with Lisa in the Digi-Caribbean. Maggie quickly works out what had happened and realizes that she is about to die. Before she is killed, she gives her daughter a shell necklace and tells Lisa that she loves both her and Ashley, not mentioning that it was them who would be responsible for her death.
An unnamed old man was somehow able to escape his pod in the real world and then hid at a nearby dumping ground that bordered the fetus fields. Meanwhile, the Resistance sends out a hovercraft to scout for weaknesses in the machine's defences. They actually fly too close to the ground and it crashes. Only Nak was left alive. He was seriously injured, but he was alive. The old man somehow manages to get Nak into safety before the Sentinels could reach him. The old man recognises the plugs in Nak's body, describing them as silvery bites, and that they both suffered dragon stings. Eventually started to see the old man might be slightly crazy. But then again, Nak reminds himself that everyone needs a bit of fantasy to be happy sometimes. Nak tries to convince the old man to help with the rebellion, trying to free all these other red pills and all this stuff, just like the rest of Zion is trying to do. But the old man rejects it, saying, nope, that doesn't fly with my personal quest to slay all these dragons. One day later, Nak wakes up and he sees that the old man has gone. He has left Nak a package. The package contains a book on the Trojan War and a drawing of them both, an arm over each other's shoulders raising a sword with the other, with the title, Freedom! Nak then manages to look through the kind of periscope thing and see an explosion in the distance, implying that the old man, while he managed to take down some sentinels, he also died in the process.
Next, the comic There Are No Flowers in the Real World. Now it does mention the per-quad hovercraft. Interestingly, we need to keep that in mind because another comic mentions that exact same hovercraft.
The scene opens with an absolute scene of destruction. Rocket standing over a phone booth that has been destroyed with a few other dead bodies around him and a car crashed behind him. Shortly after leaving, their operator, Rook, called in to inform the operatives that their ship, the Mariner, was currently under attack in the real world. So that's Rocket's problem here, is he's stuck in the Matrix because his real world ship had been attacked. Rocket contacted the Resistance for help and was given a safe house back in nearby Scottsdale. For days, Rocket awaited rescue in a safe house, all while resisting with his mind, trying to withstand the pain from his physical body's injuries. Because remember, his real world body is stuck there, hasn't been receiving food, hasn't been receiving water, which means that within the Matrix, Rocket is basically slowly dying. During these days, he'd be visited by a resistance operative called King. Rocket was saying that in the past, in the Matrix, he had a girlfriend called Mona. King convinces Rocket to go and find Mona because really, it's not fake or meaningless when it's real love. So, Rocket goes to reconnect with Mona. After a romantic night with Mona was interrupted by Rocket's worsening leg, Rocket, considering the possibility of soon dying, immediately started to distance himself from Mona. He runs away to a diner. He got into a scuffle with his own gang. Also, he reveals some truths about the Matrix to the spectating diners. He's saying that you're all slaves to the machines and all stuff like this. This tipped off the agent to Rocket's activities. News comes to Rocket from King that he would be rescued soon. Given new hope by the news, Rocket wanted to meet Mona once more, but then Agent Brown appeared. He phased into this old man in the street, so King had to shoot the agent. After Rocket found the hardline location for the phone, he called Mona, asking her to quickly meet with him. She immediately went, meeting Rocket at his location. He then informed her of his need to disappear, but also promised to come back for her. Mona promised to wait, but also promised to join Rocket wherever they needed to go upon his return. Then the phone rings. Mona was suddenly possessed by Agent Brown. Rocket hesitated to shoot Mona because of course he loved her, but of course it's too late. The agent takes control of Mona's body and then lifts up Rocket by his neck. Agent Brown strangles Rocket and he dies. The hovercraft Polaris was loading up on the surface when the operator, Twist, detected that a sentinel was patrolling nearby. Nova tried to gather back the crew members still on the surface when Flint, gazing at the ruins of the long-lost human city they were in, decided to mysteriously stay instead. Nova, uninvited, followed Flint as he took off, believing that Flint was heading off to collect more artifacts. During their expedition, however, Flint had been ignoring the artifacts that they were supposed to be collecting. Nova then recalled how people had believed that Flint, who used to be a captain, had changed since losing the ship to a sentinel attack. He had gone mad after losing the per quad. He blamed himself. So now he goes on these doomed ventures to the surface because he simply doesn't care about his own life anymore. Nova could no longer deny Flint's madness as she found themselves standing on top of the per quad's wreckage, realising that she was not following someone out to collect, but instead someone out for a hunt. Flint quickly instructed Nova to hide while he himself stood his ground in preparation to fight the approaching machine, muttering the words, "No more running," as he readied his spear. Flint evaded the Sentinel's first attack, but of course the spear is no match for the Sentinel, and the Sentinel kills Flint. She turns to the Sentinel with her own spear, ready for the Sentinel's attack. The Sentinel zooms at her, but she dodges, hits the Sentinel, and eventually she destroys it. She collects Flint's body along with the rest of the per quad crew and buries them all together. She finds all these other books, which is exactly what Flint was trying to find in the first place, and collects them all together. She tears out the final page of the book, Moby Dick, and leaves it at Flint's grave. She then decides to not use Flint's death as a warning to other people in Zion, but instead using Flint's tale to inspire other people within Zion to become collectors just like herself.
Pete is a security guard. He had longed to become a police officer since he was a child, a dream owed to the police saving his family from a home invasion years ago, a crime that resulted in the death of his father when he was only 5 years old. One evening at work, Pete brought with him the academy application papers he was struggling to fill out. The forms were then noticed by his fellow security guard Charlie, a former cop of 28 years, who annoyingly expressed disapproval at Pete's repeated application attempts. Charlie tried to advise Pete not to waste his life away on trying to serve and protect, rebuking how his life wasn't worth the sacrifice, and then further remarking that security work was where policemen were supposed to end up, not where they start. Failing to pay any attention at all to the security feeds during their discussion, however, the two security guards were then caught off guard by a sudden explosion near the building entrance as an unknown red pill breaks into the building using an incendiary bomb. Pete and Charlie, whose security stations were only a short distance away, then observed the mysterious red pill emerge from the flames before he leapt several meters up into the air, travelling past the two security guards, and landing well inside the building and running off. Confused by the incredible display they just saw, Pete immediately turns to Charlie to ask his opinion, only to witness Charlie being possessed by an agent. The agent, materializing almost instantly, then ignores Pete and immediately sprints after the red pill. Pete was unable to move for a while, trying to convince himself that he and Charlie must have been drugged or trying to think of some similar explanation. Eventually though, Pete decided to grab the shotgun locked under his desk and, after equipping his sidearm, gave careful chase, after which he then caught up to the two intruders, now too engaged in a gunfight to even notice Pete. He pointed his sidearm at the red pill and ordered him to stop, carefully positioning himself in between the two men and then pointing his shotgun held by his other arm at the agent. The agent attempted to assert authority over Pete, stating his jurisdiction and asking Pete to stand aside as he kills the red pill. But unconvinced, and wanting to take control of the situation, Pete instead chose to order both men to put down their weapons. Ultimately, both men were not happy with Pete's interference. Still staring at each other, they chose to simply ignore Pete, who suddenly and painfully realises what is about to happen. The Red Pill and the agent both raise their firearms at Pete. Back in the real world, a Docbot could be seen overseeing Pete's disconnection from his pod. His limp body, after being severed from the plugs and cables of the power plant, was then flushed into the liquefaction facilities. Emma Pearson is a young girl speaking to a therapist, Dr. Avery. She explains that after her last birthday, she saw a woman running next to her Uncle Mac and that he changed into a shadow, in her words. After that, she came to believe that nothing she sees is real, and she can see reality only by closing her eyes. Also, she plucked wires on the head of her doll, Charlie, since she believes this is how he looks with her eyes closed. Furthermore, she didn't like the bathtub anymore because, when submerged, she could forget how to get out because the shadows don't want her to. Her mother visited Dr. Avery, who heard about her hallucinations and diagnosed her with Corona syndrome. Dr. Avery then suggests a colleague to her named Dr. Frey. Next week, she explains the situation to Dr. Frey. When he asks her if she's heard of something called the Matrix, she stares at him wondering. Frey suggests that she should enter a clinic. The next day, she has her first full sleep after months. As her mother brings her to the therapist's office, instead of Dr. Frey, two men, Mr. Finn and Mr. Jones, whom she recognises as shadows, come to her to take her to a clinic. Next, the one of this Matrix cycle starts to appear, and we can know this because in Sweating the Small Stuff, the next comic, which is the next storyline, Des is starting to see Matrix code. And of course, when the one appears, it means that more and more people, more and more plugged in people are starting to experience glitches.
Sweating the Small Stuff. This follows Des. He's saying how he has a girlfriend called Mia, and she was running drugs for a cartel boss called Marlowe. He actually convinces her to stop doing that because the life is just too crazy and too dangerous. She says, "Take a good long look out of that window and tell me if you see any white picket fences, moron." So basically she's saying that she doesn't see a happy life, she sees only an illegal crime life, and that's why she's into this stuff. Des then opens up about something he's been feeling. He has been feeling that something is wrong in the world. It has a close-up of a coffee cup and some sugar going into the coffee. We go closer and closer and closer when we see what Des sees, and that is some slight kind of green code. He even says, "And the worst of it is that I feel like these guys in black are watching my every move." Suddenly then there's a huge explosion. Des thinks that it's the guys in the black suits, but what we actually see is some gangsters saying, "Marlowe says hello," which means that these are Marlowe's gangsters coming to kill Mia. In that moment of extreme anxiety for Des, he then sees the Matrix clearly. Everything slows down and he sees the numbers. He sees the bullets flying slowly through the air, and he realises what's happening. He realises that he is in a fake world. Mia manages to kill all the gunmen herself. Des managed to slow down the gunmen a little bit. Now the reason we know this is because right after this, some agents turn up at his house, which means they saw the glitch in the Matrix. So the agents appear and Des and Mia run. He ends it with saying, "When it comes to reality, you take what you can get."
Again, the one appears for version 4, resets the cycle again, and now we're on version 5. This is where it gets a little bit more weird. The comic Goliath takes place in version 5 of The Matrix, and the reason I think this is because Goliath has an alien invasion. Yeah, seriously. In this comic, in this Matrix comic, aliens try to attack Earth by throwing asteroids at it. And I just personally believe that if aliens are attacking Earth in the Matrix universe, then that would happen a few hundred years in the future, as opposed to it happening just, the year 2100. I think it would be the year 2500, 2600. Now, importantly, in the storyline of Goliath, the machines use time warping effects within this Matrix, so that they can kind of retrain a plugged-in human to be able to fight this alien thing. Keep that in mind for the next storyline. In 1977, London, England. One day, when Goliath was a teenager, the entire world around him melted away until total blackness was around him. He meets a nicely dressed man who we assume is an agent, who comments on how big Goliath is, and that there has been a missile attack on 200,000 people hooked up to a CPU, which is why Goliath's world melted away, but of course he doesn't really know what's going on. The world then returns back to him, and he has deja vu of the past 20 minutes, implying that the machines had created a backup of the past 20 minutes within the Matrix. 10 years later, he's on a subway, and he experiences an infinite loop of the passengers leaving the train again and again. Everything then fades to white, and the agent appears again, telling Goliath that they just talked 37 minutes ago, despite Goliath thinking that 10 years had passed.
The agent explains that it was aliens that attacked London in the first place, and they've been running an accelerated version of the Matrix for the past 37 minutes in the real world to generate computing power to formulate a retaliation plan, which is why Goliath has felt like 10 years have passed. The entire world that he's been living in has been accelerated. Goliath briefly wakes up in his real-world pod. Suddenly he then wakes up, back on the train, but everything feels back to normal. He talks to a woman next to him named Susan, and they eventually move in together, but she moves out after he comments on how his world feels fake. After experiencing even more deja vu, he then suddenly wakes up back as his 16-year-old self, implying that the machines have now finished whatever retaliation plan they've been devising and are ready to put it into action. Goliath joins the Royal Air Force, where the recruiting officer happens to be the same agent from before, but Goliath only barely remembers him, of course, because he's had his memory wiped. Goliath marries a woman named Sandra and quickly rises up the ranks of the RAF, eventually getting the clearance to fly strange spacecraft. He thinks 10 years pass, which was probably just another 30 minutes in the real world. The agent appears at his house and tells Goliath that he'll be piloting a PL-47, which is a spacecraft that he has now mastered after flying it again and again and again in this Matrix reality. He then wakes up out of the Matrix, outside of his real-world pod, and floats on a strange disc to the PL-47 spacecraft. On the way there, he sees the power plants, thousands of other naked humans just waiting to be plugged in. Goliath gets inside the spacecraft and finds that it fits him perfectly. It was made just for his gigantic size. He zooms out from planet Earth into space and sees the alien ship orbiting the moon, looking like a giant fungus. The alien ship hurls asteroids at him, but they miss, so Goliath gets close enough to destroy the alien ship. He's happy for a moment that he saved planet Earth, until the agent explains that it's all just a one-way trip, and he's now doomed to die in space. Goliath asks to be plugged back into the dream world from before, so he can live out his life with his original wife, Susan.
Then we have the version of the Matrix for the films, Matrix version 6.
The Miller's Tale. This opens with a young Morpheus waiting at a table within Zion with lots of other freed humans. Someone at the head of the table starts telling a story. He tells the story of Jeffrey. Jeffrey was always someone who loved looking back on the luxuries or small luxuries that humans used to have. For example, he finds DVDs. In one of the DVDs, he watches a film where the focus was on the lovely atmosphere. This is what convinced Jeffrey to say, no, I'm not happy with my current life in the real world. I'm going to find some wheat and create some bread. Other Zion operatives say, no, this is a fool's errand, you'll die, it's not worth it for just bread, but this doesn't stop Jeffrey and his crew. They go through the surface, dodging sentinels, dodging certain death, but no, eventually they find seeds. Jeffrey, alone, then finds a place on the surface to create a small bread farm. He uses some ultraviolet lights that he found on the surface, plugs them into the pylons that are still working on the surface, because of course the sentinels use these pylons to power the Matrix, and before you know it, he has a bread farm. But this wouldn't last too long, as eventually there is the Battle of the Wheat Fields, where Jeffrey is killed by sentinels. But because of this, Zion now holds a bread feast twice a year to honour Jeffrey's sacrifices. We then see a young Morpheus enjoying the bread.
Next we have the comic Farewell Performance, which features Morpheus again. He's mentioned by one of the characters, but it's Morpheus grown up because he's managed to kind of contact a few potentials by this point.
The story opens in the middle of an illusionist show. An audience stares at Bixby, a submerged and chained illusionist. The main character, an unnamed psychology student, scrawls on a notepad. On stage, the illusionist, Bixby, escapes his chains and begins to exit the stage. While crossing the stage, he stops and stares at two agents situated in the back. Bixby then exits the stage entirely. Later that same day, the student catches up to Bixby, eager to tell him about the psych paper he's writing about him. However, Bixby stares past him at two agents. Without hesitating, Bixby takes off, sprinting with the agents behind him. The student chases after the agents, excited about adding this to his psych paper. With the student in close pursuit, Bixby and the agents turn to a corner. As the student turns the same corner, he's met by a brick wall. In the background, we see a cigarette advertisement with "Dream Sticks, taste the freedom" printed on it. The next night, the student is again backstage with Bixby. As Bixby is getting ready, the student asks him about the agents, asking if he is having a problem with the IRS. Bixby finds this funny and cracks a joke. Bixby then turns to the student. The student thinks, "This was the first time I felt he even saw me, the first time I think I became real to him." Bixby asks, "Why do you think that people don't feel free?" The student answers, "This'll sound dumb, but I think it's because despite what we're told, we're really not." The student describes the cigarette ad he saw the previous day, remarking that the advert said, "Feel free, but it's really addictive." Bixby asks the student, "You want to know how I do what I do?"
and hands him a card reading, "Bixby, the incredible liberationist for hire." Bixby takes this time to mention the Matrix and asks the student if he's heard the name Morpheus. The student asks if Morpheus is also an illusionist. Bixby answers that no, he's not a performer. It then cuts to the beginning of the show, showing the agents next to the exit sign. Bixby is chained and being lowered into the tank of water. The student is also in the audience, musing on how many answers he wants. All of a sudden, the crowd is on their feet and shouting. Bixby had disappeared. The agents are on stage, guns drawn, staring at the tank. The agents take the student into custody and ask him questions. The student answers them, answering truthfully, telling the agents everything Bixby had told him. They let him go after 2 hours. Outside, the student looks at the card that Bixby gave him. It now reads, "The Matrix has you," on top of the original message. It ends with the student, "What is the Matrix? Morpheus will know."
A life less empty. We open on this very kind of generic apartment complex. We see Tiara. She is looking out the window and she's saying how it's always the same. All the days blur into each other. She goes onto her computer and looks at some of the things she's recorded in the past. One of these things is some old photos of her when she was a child with a white rabbit stuffed toy. She then has a sudden memory of someone coming into her life. Someone that looks just like Morpheus. He offered her 2 pills. As she remembers this guy, who, we know as Morpheus, she opens up something on her computer called The Matrix Has You. This little file on her computer means that she cannot shake this memory she had of the Matrix. We go back to this moment she had with Morpheus. She actually takes the blue pill. In her own words, "I ran with my tail shoved between my trembling legs." She then compares herself to these other huge people in history, like Napoleon, Joan of Arc, Einstein. She says, "All insane radical extremist. Good or bad, they all jumped off headfirst. Some crashed and burned, some became geniuses. But all tried in the face of fear and doubt. I didn't." She has learned to hate herself for taking the blue pill, but at the end, she moves this Matrix file from her computer into the deletion bin. She ends by saying, "My regret is eternal."
Next, we have the storyline A Detective Story from the Animatrix. I believe that takes place here in version 6 because we see Trinity. Although, there's the massive problem of the anachronistic architecture. So by that I mean, look at the location, look at everything in it. It's all old-timey, like they have all these old-fashioned phones, but they have like the internet as well, and it's all a bit weird. The reason for that is it takes place after Goliath, after when the machines tried warping time, and it led to a kind of glitch where half of modern things are stuck around, half of them didn't stick around, and in this little snippet of Matrix version 6 with Trinity, we're seeing a glitch, basically. It's a glitch left over with some buggy code that happened when the machines tried to warp time for Goliath in Matrix version 5. The story follows a private detective, Ash, who dreamed of following the footsteps of hard-boiled characters Sam Spade and Philip Marlowe, but is a down-on-his-luck detective. One day, he receives an anonymous phone call to search for a hacker going by the alias Trinity. Ash starts looking for Trinity and learns that other detectives have failed in the same task before him and are either missing, dead, or insane. Eventually, Ash finds Trinity after deducing that he should communicate using phrases and facts from Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which is the same thing that Neo did and Trinity did in the Matrix film with the white rabbit and follow the white rabbit and things like that. When he meets her, she removes a bug from his eye, planted by the agents earlier in an eye exam, which Ash previously thought was a dream, which again is what happened to Neo in the first Matrix film. He had that robot inside his stomach. 3 agents appear and attempt to apprehend Trinity in a shootout with her and Ash. While the two are trying to escape, an agent attempts to take over Ash's body, forcing Trinity to shoot him in order to prevent the agent from appearing. Ash is wounded, whereupon he and Trinity amicably bid farewell. Trinity tells Ash that she thinks he could have handled the truth as she jumps out of a window and escapes. The agents enter the car to find Ash, who points his gun at them while looking at the other direction and lighting a cigarette. The agents turn to Ash who, even though he is armed, will likely die. With this apparent no-win situation, the film ends with Ash's line, "A case to end all cases," as his lighter flame goes out. Next we have the comic Run Saga Run. This features the Oracle and Spoon Boy, and interestingly it's the Oracle with her old shell, the original shell that we see in the Matrix 1, so therefore it has to be, just before Matrix 1.
Saga is considered by many to be a bit of a troublemaker and would often not respect her unique abilities to bend the rules of the Matrix. She prefers the real world to the illusion that the Matrix provided and is frustrated by her many hours of study and meditation under the supervision of the Oracle. One night, she contacts an operator and explains her frustrations. The operator does not know how she got the number and says that she should not have called at all.
But before they can end the conversation, a trace lock is implemented and the operator tells Saga to run. Just after the operator hangs up the phone, 3 agents appear at the door of the telephone booth that Saga is in. They instruct her to come with them, but Saga ducks out of the phone booth and runs across the city, the agents close behind her. During their pursuit, an agent takes control of a truck and tries to run Saga over with it. She narrowly avoids the collision by arching her back so that the truck could pass over her, however her bracelet catches on the truck. The truck turns into an alleyway and, before it flips over, Saga rolls away from the resulting explosion. The agents corner her in the alleyway and nearly catch her before she goes inside a hole that the truck opened up on the side of the building. The building, which was an abandoned shop, contains a telephone that Saga uses to escape the agents. Then we have the first film, The Matrix. A generic abandoned hotel building in a city. Some police officers corner a woman, but she fights her way out with superhuman abilities. She is pursued by men in suits, also with these abilities. She answers a ringing public telephone and vanishes in an instant before the agents crash a truck into the booth. Computer programmer Thomas Anderson is becoming tired of his job and the world in general. He can tell that something is wrong, that thing being the mysterious Matrix that he occasionally reads about on hacking forums where he goes by the name Neo. Trinity, the woman from the beginning, contacts him and tells him a man named Morpheus has answers. Morpheus calls Neo to help, but some agents arrest him. They try and fail to get Neo to give up Morpheus. Neo later meets Morpheus and is offered a choice between 2 pills, the red to learn the truth and the blue to return to normal. Neo chooses the red pill and wakes up in a liquid pod surrounded by a vast futuristic farm of millions of other human pods. The pod ejects him, but his body is picked up by Morpheus' ship, the Nebuchadnezzar. Morpheus explains to Neo that the world he experienced was fake. In reality, Earth is run by machines who enslave all humans by plugging their minds into this fake world known as the Matrix, all for the purpose of using human bodies as energy. Morpheus and his crew hack into the Matrix to free and unplug special humans, bringing them back to Zion, the last safe city in the real world. The agents are computer programs created by the machines to fight freed humans in the Matrix. Morpheus believes that Neo is a powerful human prophesied to end the war. Morpheus and crew enter the Matrix to visit a prophet named the Oracle. She suggests to Neo that he is not the one, as Morpheus believes, and warns that he will have to choose between Morpheus' life and his own. A crew member named Cypher betrays Morpheus in exchange for a high-quality but fake new life in the Matrix. Morpheus allows himself to be captured to save Neo. Cypher exits the Matrix and murders several crew members, but is killed by Tank before he can kill Neo. In the Matrix, the agents interrogate Morpheus to try to learn the codes to Zion's mainframe computer. Tank proposes killing Morpheus to prevent this, but Neo decided to return to the Matrix to rescue him, as the Oracle said. During the fight, Neo gains even more superhuman abilities just like the agents. Morpheus and Trinity exit the Matrix, but Agent Smith kills Neo. In the real world, machines named Sentinels attack the Nebuchadnezzar. Trinity whispers to Neo's real-world body that she was prophesied to fall in love with the One, so he therefore can't be dead. She kisses him and he revives in the Matrix, with newfound power to control the Matrix around him. He kills Agent Smith by fatally amending Smith's coding, and exits the Matrix in time for Trinity to activate the electromagnetic pulse that saves the ship from the Sentinels. Later, Neo speaks on the phone to the machines, promising a world where anything is possible. He flies away. Then we have the comic Artistic Freedom. This features Spoon Boy as a main character. I believe this takes place after The Matrix because one of the characters, Raven Underwell, she is an artist who experiences visions of herself in the pod, and I believe glitches like that would take place after the One appears.
We see that Spoon Boy is just walking through the city. He's in Mega City and he sees a shop full of TVs showing an art piece by an artist called Raven Underwell. And all of these sculptures are causing people to have nightmares. These sculptures are, as we know, sentinels. Every time a plugged-in human sees something that resembles a sentinel, it triggers a slight thing in the back of their mind that reminds them that they are in the pod. So Spoon Boy sees this art exhibit. The TV journalist, she's saying, oh, well, I've got my ticket, so I'm going to be there. But then suddenly, the ticket pops out of her hand and appears in Spoon Boy's hand. He walks in, listens to Raven Underwell being interviewed on the TV, and she tells the story of how, in her words, she had a dream where she was in a big red pod and saw all these strange floating black monsters with tentacles and stuff. Of course, we know what she actually did was wake up. So in her words, she then wakes up and draws all these crazy creatures and creates them into a sculpture. Raven then walks up to Spoonboy and asks him what he thinks of the exhibit. She then has a vision. She suddenly blacks out. She envisions all of her sculptures coming to life, killing people and destroying the entire city. But with nowhere to run, she sees a telephone booth, which was actually ringing. The voice on the phone says, "It is not enough to believe what you see. You must also understand what you see." She looks to the side and sees a broken wall and beyond it, an endless graveyard. In that moment, she realizes that those weird floating machines that she turned her art exhibit into are not these kind of nice, motherly caretakers. No, they are her authoritative evil overseers. Suddenly, she pops back to reality, or not reality, she pops back out of her vision and she's in the gallery. Everything is as normal, but she has suddenly changed her mind. She says, "No, I'm not okay. I'm a fool. Please forgive me."
Next we have the Animatrix story program. I believe this takes place after the Matrix because the whole point in the training simulation that the characters are doing is that it's teaching them to not betray their captains. Why would they be worried about that? Because of what Cypher did. Cypher betraying Morpheus in the Matrix 1 has led to training simulations that happen in Program. Sis is engaged in her favourite training simulation, a battle program set in feudal Japan. After she successfully eliminates an attacking enemy cavalry while playing as a samurai woman, a lone male samurai appears whom Sis recognises as Duo. Initially, the two duel as allies, testing one another's fighting abilities. During the course of their duel, Duo briefly disarms Sis. He questions her concentration and wonders whether she regrets taking the red pill and took them out of the peaceful life of the virtual world. They continue fighting until she finally overpowers Duo. It is at this point that Duo states that he has something to say and that he has blocked the signal so that the operator does not listen. She assumes that he wants to propose marriage, but instead, he desires to return to the Matrix and wants Sis to come with him. When Sis believes he is teasing, Duo says he's serious and states that he has contacted the machines and it is the only way to find peace before it is too late. He urges Sis to return to him, but she refuses. Duo becomes more aggressive in his arguments, saying that he does not care about the truth anymore and how they live their lives is important because what is real does not matter. As Sis becomes incredulous, their battle becomes more serious and forceful and they both end up on a rooftop. When Duo reiterates that the machines are on their way, Sis believes that he has betrayed the humans and she tries to escape and requests an operator in order to exit the simulation. But Duo reminds her that no one can hear. When he offers her to come with him again, she refuses again and Duo, in a flying leap, tries to attack her. As the blade comes towards her, Sis, standing her ground, concentrates and catches the sword and breaks it. She takes the broken end of the blade and kills Duo. Duo states his love for her as he dies. Suddenly, she wakes from the program into the real world and discovers that the encounter with Duo was a test program devised for training purposes. A man named Kaiser assures her that she has acted appropriately during the test and met the test's targets. Clearly upset that Duo wasn't real, she punches him in the face and walks away. He remarks that, aside from the last part, she passed the test. Kid, who was formerly known as Michael Karl Popper, is a disaffected teenager who feels there is something wrong with the world. One night, the kid goes on his computer and onto a hacker chat room on the internet, asking why it feels more real when he's dreaming than when he's awake. He gets a response from an unknown person, presumably Neo, and then asks who it is and if he is alone. The next day, he is at school where he absent-mindedly scribbles Neo and Trinity's name and writes, "Get me out of here," in his notebook. He receives a call from Neo on his cell phone, who warns him that a group of agents is coming for him, and he gets chased throughout the high school, before ultimately getting cornered on the roof. He asserts his faith in Neo and throws himself off the roof. At the kid's funeral, among the people is his teacher, who converses with another school staff member and says that the world they live in is not real and the real world is somewhere else. He also says that reality can be scary and the world must have been a harmful place for the kid, and he is now in a better world. The next scene fades out as the kid awakens in the real world to see Neo and Trinity watching over him. They remark that he has achieved self-substantiation, removing oneself from the Matrix without an external aid, which was considered impossible. In both the scene and The Matrix Reloaded, the kid believes that it was Neo who saved him, but Neo says that he saved himself. The last scene shows the kid's last question on the hacker chat room being answered with, "You are not alone." Then we have the comic Wrong Number. The reason I'm placing this here is because it features Link, the operator. On her mobile phone to the operator, Link, and with agents all around, Kay demands an exit. The only one available is just in front of her, brownstone 333 first floor, but appears to be unstable. Even so, Kay says it will work and Link patches the call through. Inside, a Blue Pill City lineman has finished checking the phone, which seems to be in full working order. Kay kicks the door down and tells him the call is for her. Link warns her that something's changed, but as Kay tries to pick up the phone to exit, an agent appears in the doorway and the corridor. The corridor, rigged with explosives, explodes from just behind him. Knocked to the floor and dazed by the explosion, the lineman hears his mobile phone ring and he answers it. Kay tells him that the call is for her again, holding her gun to make the point, and in case he changes into an agent. Link tells her that the situation doesn't look good, with agents moving all around her and the last exit completely destroyed. Kay asks Link if he could re-establish an exit if she gets the phone working again, and as he confirms it, she tells the lineman to patch her back inside the phone line. The lineman says he can do it, but it might be quicker without the gun, and tells Kay that he's not a threat and that he couldn't hurt her even if he wanted to. He connects his handset, and as Link places the call, it rings and Kay drops the mobile phone as the lineman passes her the handset. But just as she is about to take it, the lineman becomes an agent, who shoots Kay before she can react. Regaining his senses, the lineman wonders if he was shot and what happened to Kay. His head pounding, he looks up and sees her lying on the floor, propped up against the wall, shot through the eye. Disbelieving the whole thing, he wonders if he did it. He tells himself that it's just not possible, and the handset keeps ringing in the background with the call that would have been Kay's safe exit. And next we have the Animatrix story, Final Flight of the Osiris, which takes place just before the Matrix Reloaded, because it tells the story of how Niobe got the message about the machine invasion. Captain Thaddeus and Jew engage in a blindfolded sword fight in a virtual reality dojo. With each slice of their swords, they remove another part of each other's clothing. Immediately after cutting the other down to their underwear, they lift their blindfolds to peek at the other. As the two are about to kiss, they are interrupted by an alarm and the simulation ends. In the next scene, they are in the real world. The hovercraft Osiris heads for Junction 21 when operator Robbie discovers an army of sentinels on his HR scans. The ship flees into an uncharted tunnel, where it encounters a small group of sentinels patrolling the area. The crew members man the onboard guns and destroy the patrol. The ship emerges on the surface 4 kilometers directly above Zion and close to the Sentinel army. Thaddeus and Jew see that the machines are using gigantic drills to tunnel their way down to Zion. The Sentinel army detects that Osiris is there and pursues the ship. Thaddeus says that Zion must be warned, and Jew volunteers to broadcast herself into the Matrix to deliver the warning while the ship is doggedly pursued. Knowing that they are not going to make it, Thaddeus and Jew admit to each other about peeking in the simulation before kissing farewell. Entering the Matrix, Jew eventually reaches a mailbox where she drops off a package. This sets the prologue for the video game Enter the Matrix. She attempts to contact Thaddeus via cell phone as the Osiris is overrun by Sentinels and crashes. The Sentinels tear their way into the ship, where Thaddeus makes his last stand against the Sentinels. Shortly after Jew says Thaddeus over her cell phone, the Osiris explodes, destroying many of the Sentinels and killing the crew. In the Matrix, Jew falls dead to the ground due to her body being destroyed by the ship. Then, Enter the Matrix story begins, and then the Matrix Reloaded story begins. Sparks, the operator of the Logos ship, informs his captain, Niobe, and her first mate, Ghost, that another ship has left them a package in the Matrix. This other ship was the Osiris, a ship that stumbled upon the machine's plot to tunnel underground to eventually attack Zion, who ultimately sacrificed themselves in order to send this message to Niobe. Niobe states how she knew Thaddeus, the captain of the Osiris, well, and therefore she realises how important the package must be. She and Ghost enter the Matrix to retrieve it. They discover that the post office, where the package is located, has been occupied by police, but they retrieve the package and escape from the pursuing police and an agent. They read it to learn what the Osiris discovered, that the machine army is on its way to Zion. Commander Locke tasks Niobe and Ghost with calling the rest of the ships back to Zion to coordinate a defense. They visit an airport in the Matrix to send a coded message to the other ships via payphones. During one call, Niobe learns that Axel, a crew member of the Vigilance ship, has been taken by agents, so she and Ghost must save him with the help of the Vigilance captain, Soren. A mysterious man, who we learn in the Matrix Revolutions as an exiled program called the Train Man, tells Niobe that Zion only lasted 72 hours last time. They meet with these other captains within the Matrix to discuss Zion's defense plans. Captain Niobe confirms a transmission from another ship that the machines will attack Zion within 72 hours. Agents attack their meeting, so Ghost and Niobe help the other captains to escape. The Keymaker, a program who can open the Matrix's secret doorways to invisible corridors, saves them and presents them with a special key that Neo must use to unlock the future. The Merovingians' henchmen steal the key. In their attempt to get it back, Niobe is captured by Vlad, a vampire and senior henchman of the Merovingian. She escapes and encounters the Merovingians' program wife, Persephone, who exchanges a kiss for access to the captured Ghost. The Merovingian destroys the special key, Niobe frees Ghost, and the Keymaker gives them a key to escape the chateau, after which they are chased by the Merovingians' twins programs. They escape and exit the Matrix. Commander Locke orders all ships to return to Zion to prepare for the onslaught, but Morpheus asks one ship to remain behind to contact the Oracle. One of the crew, Bane, encounters Agent Smith, who reveals that he is now disconnected from the Matrix after Neo altered his code in the last film, so he leaves the Matrix via the phone and enters Bane's real body in the real world. Neo fights the Oracle's bodyguard, Seraph. She explains that technically she is a computer program and therefore part of the Matrix, so Neo must decide for himself if he can trust her. She says that the Keymaker will lead him to the source of the Matrix, then she leaves. Smith appears and explains that he is now able to copy-paste himself onto other people, so he and Neo fight. We see the Oracle tell Seraph, her guardian program, that there is not much time left. Despite Commander Locke's concern for her, Niobe volunteers her ship to enter the Matrix to find Neo's ship, the Nebuchadnezzar. Neo, Morpheus and Trinity visit a rogue program called the Merovingian, who is imprisoning the Keymaker, but his wife, Persephone, secretly leads them to him as revenge for the Merovingians' infidelity. Neo, Morpheus, Trinity and the Keymaker escape the Merovingians' crew and some agents, while the other human crews attempt to destroy some power plants to stop a security system being triggered, allowing Neo to enter a door. Haunted by a vision of Trinity's dream, Neo asks her to remain on the Nebuchadnezzar. One of the crews is destroyed by a sentinel, but Trinity completes their mission, but she is cornered by an agent. The Keymaker manages to open the doors, but Agent Smith appears and shoots him. Neo meets a program called the Architect, the creator of the Matrix. He explains that Neo is actually a program, and that the Matrix is now in its 6th iteration. Neo is meant to stop the Matrix's system crash that recurs due to the concept of human choice within it. As with the 5 previous ones, Neo has a choice: either return to the source to reboot the Matrix and pick survivors to repopulate the soon-to-be-destroyed Zion, as his predecessors all did, or cause the Matrix to crash and kill everyone connected to it, which would mean humanity's extinction when Zion is destroyed. Neo instead tries to save Trinity, risking the survival of the human race. Trinity is shot, but Neo catches her from falling, then removes the bullet and saves her. They return to the Matrix, and the Nebuchadnezzar is destroyed by Sentinels, but Neo somehow manages to destroy the Sentinel with his mind. They are picked up by another ship. Its captain reveals the other ships were wiped out when someone activated an EMP too early, and that the only survivor was Bane. So after Neo basically defied the Architect's order for the first time ever, it meant that the Matrix was starting to enter this new area where it had never seen this before. There were new rules happening, new glitches, new crazy things. For example, this new comic book, The Man Who Knew Too Much. In this, we see that a few agents managed to kind of duplicate themselves at the end. That says to me that the machines see the trouble that's being caused by Smith, and they try to kind of like install their own duplication code system. The story is narrated by a Harold Hobbs, writing an entry in his journal, which begins, "Strange things are happening. While reading the newspaper at home, sitting next to a computer with a game running, the doorbell rings, and Jeff stops by. Rambling incoherently about the end of the world, computers and hackers, he says it all comes down to a red pill, leading Harold to think he needs rehab. Sometime later, on November 17th, Harold is at work in his data entry job, feeding in endless, faceless and meaningless names into a computer, when an agent arrives, asking him about Jeff, who he is trying to find. Jeff writes on Harold's screen, mirroring the screen in the Matrix where Trinity does the same to Neo, saying not to tell the agent anything. The agent claims Jeff has committed unspeakable crimes against the state, but seems not to notice Harold typing back in reply, asking what is happening. Jeff replies back that everything he told him is true, and he'll contact him. As the agent looks up from his file to Harold on the computer screen, Harold asks what he wants to know about Jeff, and the agent tells him they need to know the last time he saw Jeff, and the last time they talked. Just as the agent is about to put his hand on Harold's shoulder, he spins around, shouting that he doesn't know what games are being played, but that he has nothing to say. The agent replies that he will. "It's just a matter of time," he says. "We'll be watching you, Mr. Hobbs." Setting about trying to find Jeff himself, Harold tries to phone Jeff's parents, but is connected to a Mexican restaurant instead. He tries mutual friends, none of which have seen or heard from Jeff in the past 6 months. From then on, Harold started to become paranoid, feeling that he is being watched and followed, and decides not to go home as a result. Checking into a nice hotel he had stayed at before, he finds the place dirty now with lots of bugs, so goes for a walk to clear his head and think. As he decides nothing makes sense, someone mugs him, approaching from behind with a flick knife and demanding his money. He refuses, hitting his assailant who drops the knife and flees. Still depressed, he carries on walking, and a public telephone he is passing rings. It's Jeff, saying that he can't answer the questions he has yet, but that he's no longer being watched, telling him to go home just as an agent takes a photo of him from an upper story window of a building on the opposite side of the street. Still mystified, Harold goes home and decides to search the internet, but as he finds that, the entire thing has been wiped out. Jeff comes back and says, "I can't tell you where I am, but remember the Matrix? How we looked for answers? The tables have turned. The answers now look for you. Stay well." The story ends with Harold sitting by a window with a book, all of the pages of which apparently read "The Matrix has you, the Matrix has you," again and again and again, as dark-suited men seem to be watching him from every window of the surrounding buildings. Next, the comic Burning Hope, and we know that this takes place after Matrix Reloaded because they mention Smiths, plural.
It opens with a red pill called 8-Ball exploring an orphanage. It's an old beat-down old church. The operator on the other end of the phone is called Sharon. 8-Ball says, "I bet the Oracle didn't see this coming." He then walks into the church, and it's all been burnt to a crisp. Everything is just debris. He raises the point that, of course, the news would have picked up on this. I mean, it's an orphanage that has been burnt down. What that means is, this is the agents changing something. The orphanage has not been burned down. He means that he could be going into a trap. Sharon says that she has an exit 2 blocks away, but it's too late. 8-Ball sees the fire rising as he burns to death. An unspecified amount of time later, Sharon is talking with Duncan, someone else on their ship in the real world. We learn that there's a tag program active right now. It all comes from a quest that they got from the Oracle. We then see another operative of the crew called Link. So this Link proposes that they do something, because as long as the tag program is active, they're kind of bait. So Link goes back into the Matrix, into the burnt out church. All we know is they're looking for this thing that the Oracle told them to look for. He sees some graffiti on the wall. It's a little white rabbit. Link says, "It's something that the Oracle said, and the child would be Hope. We thought this was about saving ourselves, but that's her name, Hope. She has the tag, Charon." So then Link suddenly gets the realization they are looking for someone called Hope. He gets closer and closer. Charon is reading a high signal on the tag. Suddenly then he sees there's someone else there in the church. He walks a bit further, and it's an old woman. Strangely, the tag is beeping like crazy, but then Link realizes maybe Hope is this old woman. But then agents turn up and start firing at Link. Link fires back, running towards the tag, running towards who they think is Hope. He goes to the roof of the building and sees another person. This time, it's a man, an older man. Link realizes what's happened. This is Hope. Hope is someone who has the ability to change their appearance, a shapeshifter. And he can tell this is Hope because this old man has a white rabbit stuffed toy. They both get to the exit and safely rejoin the crew in the real world.
In the real world, Neo and Bane lie unconscious on a ship. In the Matrix, Neo is trapped in a subway station. A family of programs there explain that it's a middle ground between the Matrix and the Machine City. A program loyal to the Merovingian blocks Neo from boarding the train. The Logos receives a call from Seraph who asks them to visit the Oracle. The Oracle explains that Neo is lost between the Matrix and the real world, and that Niobe must eventually know what to do when the time comes. She leaves and encounters the countless copies of Agent Smith, who says that she can help him find Neo, but she quickly escapes and exits the Matrix. The Logos is attacked by Sentinels, so Niobe activates the EMP to destroy them. Seraph tells Morpheus and Trinity about Neo, so they force the Merovingian to release him. Neo gets visions of the Machine City. The Oracle tells him that Agent Smith plans to destroy the Matrix and the real world. Neo leaves and several Agent Smiths assimilate her. In the real world, the Nebuchadnezzar and Hammer ships find Niobe's ship, the Logos. Bane claims he doesn't remember the massacre that he survived. Niobe gives Neo her ship, so he and Trinity can travel to the Machine City. Bane stows away and they fight, with Neo realizing that Bane has been assimilated by Smith, so kills him, but not before Bane blinds Neo. Meanwhile, Zion is overrun with Sentinels. A wounded captain ordered the gate to open to allow Niobe and Morpheus in so they can activate their EMP to disable the Sentinels, but also Zion's defences. The humans are convinced that the next defence will be their last stand. Near the Machine City, the Logos is bombarded by thousands of missiles, causing it to crash, fatally wounding Trinity. Neo encounters Deus Ex Machina, the machine leader. Neo explains Smith's plans, so Deus Ex agrees to peace with Zion if Neo can defeat Smith. Neo confronts the Oracle version of Smith, who claims to have foreseen victory. Neo realizes he can't win, so allows himself to be assimilated, which allows Deus Ex to send a deletion command through Neo's body to delete Smith. The Sentinels withdraw from Zion. Neo's body is carried away by the machines. The Matrix gets rebooted. In a park, the Oracle and the Architect agree that peace will only last as long as it can, and any human who wants to leave the Matrix can. The Oracle tells Sati, the little girl from the Subway Program family, that she believes they'll see Neo again. The Oracle claims that she didn't foresee this scenario, but she believed anyway. Nice, so we have the Truce, a brand new era for the storyline, a brand new era for the Matrix universe. Humans and machines are no longer fighting. At least they're no longer fighting in the way they used to be. Michael Karl Popper is in the middle of a training mission with Morpheus overseeing. Michael gets overcome by agents and fails, to Morpheus's dismay. Michael complains that Neo is dead and therefore can't encourage him like before, but then the RSIs of Neo, Trinity and Seraph appear in the simulation to help him. Michael retries the simulation, but this time with his skateboard, a key item that helped him escape the agents before. The agents attack even harder, with a version of the Pale Twins attacking too. Michael evades them and defeats them. Then we have the comic Return of the Prodigal Son. Now interestingly in this, I've placed this here because Jimmy, the main character, finds a strange device that we never know what it is, but it's a device that the Red Pills are all after. The agent takes the device, but the agent doesn't wipe Jimmy's memory. If it was a previous version of the Matrix, or just before the truce, then the agent would have definitely wiped the Blue Pill's memory. But not this time, no. Now it's the Truce era. So therefore, the fact that Jimmy didn't have his memory wiped tells me that this is taking place in the Truce era.
In a city at night, we hear some Red Pills speaking with their operator named Plug, saying they need an exit. A man overhears them and they draw their guns on him. His narration reveals that he was expecting some gangsters under Boss Kaplan. His face then warps and everything cuts to black. His narration continues, flashing backwards in time. We learn he's called Jimmy. Jimmy explains that he was intending to betray Boss Kaplan after Kaplan betrayed him. But then Kaplan turns up and his goons shoot Jimmy's crew, then Jimmy escapes. This is where the story started, as we see the same scene with the Red Pills, but this time we see that Jimmy regains his sight after the blackout to see the Red Pills all dead on the floor. Jimmy loots their bodies to find some ID, but instead finds a small mysterious device. He continues to a local church, where it's revealed his narration was speech directed at a minister, an old friend of Jimmy's. Neither can explain how he blacked out and then woke up surrounded by bodies. The minister explains that another local gangster had the exact same experience previously. They ponder if he and Jimmy had been possessed by evil. Suddenly, a Red Pill approaches Jimmy and demands he hand over the mysterious device. The minister warps into an agent, so the Red Pills shoot him, which sends Jimmy into a rage. He suddenly blacks out again and wakes up with the Red Pills all dead. An agent nearby takes the device and threatens Jimmy about how much he remembers. Satisfied, the agent leaves. Jimmy then walks away, convinced that he must now take some kind of leap of faith.
Then we have the Animatrix story Beyond. Now again, the exact same reason. All these children experiences these strange glitches in this kind of haunted house thing, and they don't have their memory wiped. That says to me that the machines are following these new rules of the truce. We see a teenage girl, Yoko, looking for her cat, Yuki. While asking around the neighbourhood, which is somewhere in the megacity that resembles Japan, she meets a group of young boys. One of them tells her that Yuki is inside a nearby haunted house where they usually play. The haunted house is an old run-down building filled with an amalgamation of anomalies which are revealed to be glitches in the Matrix that the children have stumbled across. They have learned to exploit them for their own enjoyment through several areas which seem to defy real-world physics. The boys play with glass bottles that reassemble after being shattered, and they go into a large open space in the middle of the building that has a zero-gravity effect. Meanwhile, as Yoko searches for Yuki throughout the building, she encounters some anomalies on her own. She goes through an area where broken light bulbs flicker briefly, during which they seem intact, walks into a room where rain is falling from a sunny sky, and goes down a hallway where a gust of wind appears and disappears. She finally finds Yuki outside on a concrete pavement where she sees shadows that do not align with their physical origins. Yoko then joins the boys in the open space where she sees a dove feather rotating rapidly in midair and experiences the zero gravity as she falls to the ground slowly and safely. She and the boys start using the zero gravity force to float, jump high and do athletic stunts all in midair, and can also land and fall without hitting the ground. Throughout the film, brief sequences show that agents are aware of the problem in the Matrix, and a truck is seen driving towards the site to presumably deal with the problem. It arrives just as the children are having trouble with a large group of rats, and an agent-led team of rodent exterminators emerges from the truck. In the building, when Yoko finds Yuki again, she sees one last anomaly where she opens a door that leads to an endless dark void after being found by the exterminators. The team clears everybody out of the building. The story ends when Yoko returns to the area the next day and finds the site turned into an unremarkable parking lot. She sees the boys unsuccessfully attempting to recreate the bizarre occurrences of yesterday and going in search of something else to do. Then we have the comic book Saviors. This takes place here because it's telling the story of a red pill who has grown tired of the truce. They mention the truce and they say, oh no, we gotta get back to war. That's how it used to be. That's how I like it. After witnessing his parents die as they were freed from the Matrix the week before, Hitch, a Red Pill operative, makes a deal with the machines. He attacks and kills his entire team while in the Matrix, and an agent smashes in through the window, shooting him in the leg and confirming their deal, saying that their section of the Matrix has been scrambled, all to prevent the resistance from working out what really happened. The agent leaves after throwing him a mobile phone, and Hitch calls the operator, who wants to know what went on, demanding an exit. Back in Zion, Hitch talks to a captain who has read the report on the death of his parents. The captain explains that many of those lost were trained directly under him, but that the losses must strengthen Zion, and says that while they don't know who attacked the team, the Merovingian was believed to be involved. While saying that he knows the captain's position on the war, and that he wants to destroy the machines in revenge, Hitch deploys a small bug-like bomb, which crawls up underneath the underside of the captain's desk. He quotes the captain, saying, "Anything is better than our slowly dying under a pretense of peace. This is simply another form of slavery. We must mercifully end the blind suffering. We must destroy the Matrix." He confirms that he believes the words, and the captain tells him to recover, as there will be much to do in the coming weeks. So here, Hitch is basically convincing the captain that he wants to work with the captain to secretly end the truce and reignite the war. Hitch thanks him, saying that he is ready, but as he walks away he presses a button, detonating the bomb and killing the captain in the ensuing explosion. The whole thing he said about joining the captain was just lies. Back in the Matrix later, Hitch stands, chairing a meeting of a large financial company in a skyscraper boardroom. After the others have left, one man in a suit wearing dark glasses remains behind, and says that his help in this recent Accord setback has been much appreciated, and that he hopes his reinsertion has been agreeable. Hitch expresses his wish never to have to kill again, and asks if the war is starting again, to which the agent replies that such distinctions are purely human. The machines only want survival and will continue to strive for it. This sudden realization makes Hitch call his wife. He says he's cancelled their dinner and has booked a flight for that night, calling it an early midnight crisis. He says, "There's no telling what will happen tomorrow, but today we are blessed with a world of opportunities. Tonight we will start exploring them." As we see him back in his pod, still on the phone in the Matrix, he replies to her, "Yes, I love you too." Then we have the comic Butterfly. I've placed this here because this is a new style of machine interaction with a human body. At the start, we see this one frame, that's it, one page, of a DocBot floating around a pod. Then we see the comparison of a butterfly floating around some shrubbery. The theory is that this DocBot hacked this body, this human body or this butterfly body, just like an agent does. And why do they do that? It's because in the Truce era, machines are gradually growing more curious and more compassionate.
Butterfly. This story cuts back and forth between a red pill being chased by agents and another man called Shang-Su simply watering his plants in his flat. At the start, we see DocBot in the real world, hovering above lots of different red pods. This is an exact parallel to a butterfly within the Matrix hovering over some trees. The text reads, "Shang-Su had a dream. In the dream, he was a butterfly. The red pill continues to be chased by the agents through the streets. And Shang-Su continues to just simply light some incense and see this butterfly float through his flat." The text reads, "When he awoke, Shang-Su was unsure if he was a man who had dreamed that he was a butterfly, or if he was a butterfly who was dreaming that he was a man. In that moment, Shang-Su acknowledges the butterfly as it flies away. The red pill, meanwhile, is cornered by the agents. This little butterfly floats by the red pill, and the red pill sees it. The butterfly then kinda distracts the agents as the red pill dives through the window, bursting through Shang-Su's window as glass and stuff goes flying everywhere, and the butterfly flies through as well. The phone is ringing behind him, which is obviously the red pill's exit that he's been aiming for. Shang-Su points the red pill in the direction of the phone in the other room as the agents are still trying to shoot at him. The red pill picks up the phone, and Shang-Su somehow uses his broomstick to hit all of the guns out of the agents' hands. The agents then pick up their guns, fire at the red pill, but it's too late. The red pill has made his exit. They then shoot Shang-Su right there. The butterfly flies by and flies out the window into the open landscape. The text reads, "In truth, Shang-Tsu was neither man nor butterfly, and yet he was both."
Then we have the comic An Easy One. In this, I've placed this here because the machines try to kind of gain more superiority by creating a virus that they transfer in money. And that's a kind of strange way of gaining superiority. They're not trying to fight. They're just saying, okay, how can we sneakily try and defeat these humans, without them knowing? So they kind of transfer a virus onto money that they're going to spread out throughout the entire human race within the Matrix. Also, Avalon, the character in this, calls the generation the More generation, implying that this group of people plugged in, this group of blue pills, they're not used to the kind of struggles that they might have experienced in a previous version of the Matrix before the truce. This is a kind of new truce era of the Matrix, where there's more materialism, more stuff.
The story begins with Avalon and her crew preparing to embark on a disinfect mission in the Matrix to destroy a virus using a load of cash as its carrier, an AI which is known to instill confusion and schizophrenia in those who touched it. However, a gang of anonymous criminals calling each other Mr. G, Mr. P, Mr. Y and so on, led by the boss man and his henchman Mike, were also after the money, about to try to steal it, unaware of its side effects. As Avalon's crew set out on bikes to track down and destroy the money van with the virus, their operator informs them that the money truck is outside is being robbed. A glitch in the Matrix causing the sudden arrival of an army of police and agents puts an end to the robbery, and only 4 criminals are alive by the time Avalon arrives. An agent kills 2 of the criminals, and Avalon leaps off her bike, shooting at him to distract and prevent any return fire. She helps Boss Man to escape, throwing a grenade at the agent standing next to the truck while one of her crew provides covering fire. The explosion destroys the truck too, blowing up the money and the virus carried in it along with the last criminal. Bossman seems more concerned with the destruction of all the money than anything else, but escapes with Avalon, running through the back streets to a small closed restaurant as she tells him about the virus and the Matrix itself. The phone is ringing and she escapes as the police arrive. Seeing Bossman has a gun, they open fire and the comic ends with Bossman falling down shot while the phone hangs in the air.
Then we have lots of the events of the Matrix Online. Even though Neo died, his RSI continued to survive somehow as digital artifacts within the Matrix. This prompts a giant treasure hunt from everyone involved in the Matrix really, trying to find fragments of Neo's RSI, his residual self-image. That's the kind of avatar. Specifically, people go after the Shapers, who are able to manipulate the scattered leftovers. The Oracle actually claims that this was Neo's own decision, so using his power that he supposedly got from contacting the Source or something, he deliberately split his RSI all over the Matrix so that one day they could be reconnected and the world could use his powers yet again. Another big thing with Neo is that his real-life body, his actual dead body that happened in the Machine City, no one knows what happened to it. The machines never confirmed what they did with Trinity's body either, so maybe this is what's going to lead into the Matrix 4. We don't know. So this is something quite interesting about the Matrix Online, is that it basically says what would happen if a martyr died and the groups of people left over all had differing opinions. And there are 2 main groups that are completely opposite to each other. One aligned to the red pill and one aligned to the blue pill mentality. The EPN stands for E Pluribus Neo. This group is dedicated to looking at all the work that Neo did, his whole mantra, and trying to continue that within the Matrix. They believe that everyone plugged into the Matrix should be allowed to exit if they so wish. Do you remember Michael Karl Popper? It's the character Kid that basically said, "Oh, Neo, you saved me." He becomes the leader of the EPN because he kind of worshipped Neo anyway. In a similar way, there's also a group who believe that Cypher was a martyr, and he died trying to achieve an amazing goal, and that being put people back into the Matrix. The Cypherites are all about subservience to the machines. Although as a little twist, eventually in the Matrix Online you see that the Cypherites are being led by a machine-built program disguised as a human. His name is Kryptos. Both parties, Zion and the machines, actually try to really give the truce a chance. The machines even create a brand new type of agent that's more based on peace, more kind of friendly. However, the straw that broke the camel's back is when the machines discovered that Zion was preparing for a new war. They took this as a sign that there was another war coming, when really Zion was simply just preparing as a worst-case scenario. humans started to basically build a second Zion, a second place that they could go to if another war broke out. They were stockpiling weapons and different EMP and things like this. The machine said, right, that's it, this violates the term of the truce, so we are about to start a brand new war. And that's exactly what they did. The Matrix Online introduces a new character called the General. The General is the program representation of the leader of the attack on Zion. So he was in charge of all those machines, all those sentinels, all that big drilling thing. The General led the attack on Zion. As the Oracle says, we're all here to do what we're all here to do. So what that means is when the General found that he no longer had a purpose of, killing humans, he was not happy about that. So he spends his time in the Matrix Online desperately trying to reignite the war. He does this fascinating thing where he creates a brand new type of agent again called the Red Eye agents. These are agents who are much more vicious, and he sends them to attack both Zionists and machines. At one point, he even actually kidnaps Sati. When Seraph hears about this, he instantly goes on a massive killing spree and goes after seemingly random targets. But anyway, once Seraph rescues Sati, both he and Sati return to the Oracle's side. So as we know, Morpheus is quite a kind of dedicated follower of the prophecy and all that stuff. So when he discovers that the machines have not returned Neo's body, he becomes obsessed with it. So he goes to the Oracle for some advice, and he creates these little bombs that basically go off and expose the green code to plugged-in humans. He's showing the Matrix to people before they're even ready for it, which is a bit too far for Morpheus. The Assassin, a program hired by the Merovingian, goes after Morpheus and kills him. Later, this assassin character is actually killed by Niobe. The General creates a kind of fake Morpheus at one point, but this fake Morpheus becomes self-aware and goes against his programming. So you might think that the main villain of the Matrix Online would be the General, or the Cypherites, or the Machines, but the Merovingian himself plays a real big part. All the kind of monsters under his control, like the vampires and the werewolves, they try to form a mutiny and end his reign, but they fail. Of course, we know that the Merovingian's goal is to get rid of the Oracle, because he hates her so much. Remember, the Oracle was the program that replaced him, but he doesn't manage to do that. Eventually, when Niobe discovers the Merovingian's true intentions, she dedicates herself to his absolute destruction, and she makes Zion team up with the General at one point. Eventually, the Merovingian does come very, very close to killing the Oracle, but he is foiled by Kid, that's Michael Karl Popper. So you know how I said about EPN, and their goal is to basically continue Neo's mantra of letting people be free? There's one group called Unlimit that take that to the extreme, and they force people to be free. Their ultimate goal is to just force every single human to be unplugged. Anome is one of Niobe's team. He steals a machine that the General had planned to kind of give Zion when they were teaming up against the Merovingian. This somehow creates this kind of strange alliance between Zion and the Merovingian, because they're just desperately trying to rescue Niobe from Anome. He gets hold of these strange kind of test tube things that basically give anyone who drinks it or takes it a extra power, and you can see which ones are the hyper red pills in the Matrix because they have green eyes. Anome's vicious rise to power makes him an enemy of basically everyone in the Matrix, but eventually he is killed by agents. Wow, so if you're still watching that right now, thank you so much. It's good to see you, but yeah, that was fun to make. Thank you. If you like this stuff, then please subscribe by clicking the subscribe button, because I release a brand new video every single week. My name is George, this is Jam Punch, and I will see you next time.